of Nehemiah. If you have problems finding it, it's right behind us. Right? And if you have problems with that, close to that First Chronicles. Second Chronicles. Nehemiah, the 6th chapter. We're going to read 1 through 9. Now it came about that when it was reported that to Sanballat, to get to Tobiah and to Geshem, there, and to the rest of the enemies that I had rebuilt the wall, and that no breach remained in it, although at that time I had not set up the doors of the gates. The Sanballat and Geshem sent a message to me, saying, Come up, come let us meet together at Shechem in the plain of Ono. But they were planning to harm me. So I sent messengers to them, saying, I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? And they sent messages to me 4 times in this manner, and I answered them in the same way. And Sanballat sent his servant to me in the same manner a 5th time, with an open letter in his hand. In it was written, It is reported among the nations, and Geshmu, that says, that you and the Jews are planning to rebel. Therefore, you are rebuilding the wall, and you are to be their king, according to these reports. You have also appointed prophets to proclaim in Jerusalem concerning you. A king in Judea is in Judea, and now it will be reported to the king according to these reports. So come now, let us take counsel together. Then I sent a message to them, saying, Such things as you are saying have not been done, but you are inventing them in your own mind. For all of them were trying to frighten us, thinking they will become discouraged with the work, and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands. About 69 years ago to this weekend, George C. Marshall, as I have said on other occasions, he spoke to the graduates of Harvard University and announced that at that time the rebuilding of Europe after World War II. And what he said ultimately cost the United States $13 billion. If you translated that into today's funds, we're talking about $100 billion or more, a little over $100 billion would have cost, what it would have cost. George C. Marshall would go further than simply saying that he wanted to rebuild Great Britain, he wanted to rebuild France or the other allies. He went on to say that he wanted to rebuild Germany and Japan and Italy. The plan that he came up with would be known as the Marshall Plan. President Clinton, a few years ago, about 50 years when he went to visit Europe for this day, he said he indicated that all over Europe they were having celebration. They were celebrating what America had done for Europe. Now the Russians were offered the same thing that the other allies were offered. They were offered help to rebuild Russia. And Stalin just did not want to do it. Just think of what that would have done as the people of Russia looked at the United States. The way they looked and considered the United States would have drastically changed if Stalin had just taken the money. and let us help them out. We probably, and most likely, we wouldn't have gone through the Cold War. Now, the Germans, they did not want any help, especially with food. Because we had bombed them into oblivion. We had bombed them and we had destroyed them, laid them flat. And now we're sending them food. And the Germans began to think, well, what they're going to do now, they're going to take that food and poison it and kill us. So for a long time, we had a problem with trying to get people in Germany to eat our food because they thought it would poison them. Now we have NATO, and I've talked about before, where NATO has taken in some of the northern European countries that were once our enemies, are now a part of NATO, is really disturbing to Russia. Russia thinks we have other intentions there, and therefore they don't go along with this, and they're very upset about it. Well, today's lesson that I read to you is another Marshall Plan, but actually it's referred to as the Nehemiah Plan, but it's very similar. The plan revolved around the rebuilding of the devastated city of Jerusalem that had been taken off into captivity by the Chaldeans. The ultimate destruction of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar and his army carried all the gold that was and the best mines from Israel. They carried all the gold from the temple. They carried all the utensils, the worship utensils from the temple. Everything was taken. Now Nehemiah was aware that Judah lay in and needed revitalizing. He approached King Artaxerxes and said he requested help. He prayed about it. And it was, to Nehemiah's amazement, Artaxerxes went along with it. Now, if you want to read something really interesting, read the Apocrypha on this same issue. I tell you what, I wonder sometimes why some of the books in the Apocrypha are not in there. I know in the Bible, I know there were at one time, but this is a particular interesting one. How Artaxerxes was convinced to help Nehemiah, or to help the people of Jerusalem. In that account, in 1 Esdras, there are 3 guards that guarded the king, and they put a slip of paper under it. What's the strongest thing in the world? And the king read it, and these 3 men gave an answer to it, and they realized that who answered it correctly would get a lot of land, a lot of power, and be put in gold and set on the throne. And it was really interesting what the 3 of them came up with. One came up, the strongest thing in the world is whiskey, is liquor. The other one, because it can make you do anything. It can make you do things that you don't want to do. Number 2 was women. It was king. It was the king. The king, you did whatever the king wants you to do. He's the strongest. Moves nations, moves armies, and so forth. The third one, though, was women. He said a woman is the strongest thing in the world. And that was the one that won it. And it is really interesting. But all 3 of those things are really interesting if you read Esdras. But out of that, because Artaxerxes had said, I will give to you whatever you want, whatever you want. And this is what he wanted, to go back to build Jerusalem, to build the walls. Well, just as the Russians have resisted, and NATO and the possibility of NATO, Israel resisted the plan for the Judah, for those in captivity to come back and rebuild Judah. See, Samaria had become a mixed race, and so when the people from Judah and those who came from Judah, well, that's where we get the name Jews. They came down to help, but it bothered Nehemiah, Ezra, and so they did not want to be a part of them. Israel. You remember, Jesus had a problem. He didn't have a problem, but his disciples had a problem with him going through Samaria, didn't they? Go around it. There was still that contention, that hate there. So these people from Israel decided, we're going to get rid of Nehemiah. We do not want Judah, so we need to cut the head off. We're going to assassinate Nehemiah. So they sent to Nehemiah for him to come down and meet them on the plains of Ono. But Nehemiah, he knew what they had in mind, that they're probably going to kill him. So he says one of the great statements in all of the Bible, and one that we need to remember. I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? Why should I stop what I'm doing? Well, let me tell you something. We have people today that stop on the dime for anything. They stop. They don't go to the church. They don't do things. They don't do things for the Lord because other things get in the way. I'm doing a great work. They don't see this as a great work. People don't see the military as a great work. We don't need a military. But somebody has to has to not give in to everything. I'm doing a great work. When all the other means had stopped and Nehemiah was not doing it, they had not been able to kill him. They decided, well, we'll send a letter to Artaxerxes. We'll send a letter back. And what they didn't know is that Artaxerxes had given all these plans to build the wall, had made it possible, gave them all the implements, the money to go, and all the stuff that goes into, to revitalizing the city. But the devil has a way of, if he can't beat you one way, he'll beat you by gossip. He'll beat you by propaganda. That was one of the problems in one of the most recent elections in Iowa, I think. One of the candidates just left, and the other candidate said he's pulled out of the race. All he did was he went over to another state to start politicking. Propaganda. It can kill. But now Nehemiah said, but now God, I've been able to handle this. Strengthen my hands. Nehemiah was afraid, but he also knew that the foundation upon which he was building was firm. The foundation that had been laid down in Jerusalem was you're capable of building on top of it. As I've said on many occasions, when you build on, you could go through Jerusalem and you could tell where every battle was that they defeated Israel or Jerusalem. The wall that would fall, they would build a new wall on top of that wall, on top of that wall, the next wall, right on up. Archaeologists say you can tell exactly when each wall was, what the battles, that Jerusalem was destroyed. It was repaired again and again and again. The second thing, so it was built on a great foundation. The second thing is that it was built on the will of God. It was built on according to the will of God. Nehemiah had in mind the thoughts of the psalmist. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the defense of my life. Whom shall I dread? Paul said, who will separate us from the love of God? And then Paul goes on to say in 1 Corinthians, according to the grace of God which was given to me, like a wise master builder, I laid a foundation, and another is building on it. But each man must be careful how he builds on it. That's why I think families are falling apart today. Because whatever foundation you set, or your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, what's the foundation of this country? What we're building on now will not last the way people are. The church is no good. That foundation is no good anymore, people will think. Our families. Forget about those things. But this is the foundation. When that family starts falling apart in the years ahead, it's because the foundation was eroding. Not from the bottom, from the middle weight of the generations. We're gathered here today in a building that was built in 1976. That's a good year. We honored, we celebrated the new 200th anniversary of this country, and this church was built then. You can see some of the things that how it's built, and you can tell it was 1976. If it were built in 1980 or 90, it would be different. It would be, the architecture would have been different. Maybe even the doors would have been different. The stuff that was used to build the church. Today, we celebrate and remember those who fought for this great nation. The young men and women who gave their lives and for the foundation that they were setting was for freedom, for us to enjoy. And just like this building, though, men and women have given their lives, and they built and they worked hard to make this building possible on this corner. And it's for the next generation. But if the next generation doesn't take advantage of it, there's a problem. The technology always changes. You can see in a war how it changes. It almost takes a war. People don't realize how important war is to building war implements for the next war, because it changes. Vietnam was an example. How they started in Vietnam. By the end of Vietnam, the way we were fighting, the equipment we had was entirely different. That's true for a Desert Storm too, isn't it, Kenny? I mean, your implements change. But it's based on the same foundation. The men have not changed. The men who give their lives have not changed. That has not changed at all. Today we continue all that, and as I said, in the Middle East, and also fighting there. But it's been accepted a little differently than the Vietnam conflict in our society. And I think even a worse scenario is to have this devastating, this spiritual problem, this war that is going on across the world. Nehemiah had a good foundation upon which to build, structurally and spiritually. What are we leaving for our children? Are we building a good foundation? If you're a parent, you better be putting down a good foundation, because life can be hell on this earth if there's not a great foundation set. I agree with the Apostle Paul. I laid a foundation, Paul is talking about, and another is building upon it. But let each man be careful how he builds upon it. Let me read to you from Matthew 7:24. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts upon them may be compared to the wise man who built his house upon the rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and burst against the house. And yet it did not fall, for it had been founded upon the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act upon them will be like the foolish man who built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and burst against the house. And it fell, and great was its fall. I really do believe that the foundation we are leaving, and the kids, we're leaving them no foundation upon which to be firmly built, attached to. The first problems come along later in life, they're destroyed. The first issues that come along that can cause them harm, they just or cause them a problem, they just go berserk, they lose it, because they've never had a foundation upon which to say, I know that this will too pass. I know that the Lord is going to look after me. It's important that we lay down a good foundation, because those who are coming after us are going to build on top of us. Hopefully they'll lay down a good foundation. We're going to open the doors today of the church for you to decide about the kind of foundation that you're putting down, what you want, what is important, what kind of materials are you using with your family, your grandchildren. It's important. We're going to open the doors for you to make that decision today. We're going to turn